Hello, Startup Battlefield Africa. Wetinde, how's it? Nagadef, bonjour, Jumbo. We're so happy to have Funke Opeke with us, CEO of MainOne. And she's such a great example of entrepreneurship. And this event is really about startups doing big things with investment and connectivity. So Funke's done all of that. And for all of you entrepreneurs out there who sometimes think your task is difficult, imagine raising $250 million. Imagine creating an undersea fiber optic cable from Portugal to Nigeria. And what you're doing might seem a little bit easier. So thank you, Funke. And we're going to tap you on everything entrepreneurship and tech and get your advice and learn what you're up to. So why don't we start with, I don't want to assume everybody knows MainOne, but tell us a little bit about the highlights of what you guys are doing these days, business-wise.
MainOne is focused on enabling the digital transformation of West Africa with infrastructure. We started with deploying a submarine cable system connecting the region to the rest of the world. So that actually meant building a 7,000-kilometer cable from Portugal to Nigeria. And we're currently in the process of deepening the impact of that system. So that our system came in service in 2010.
Right.
We're extending our reach to additional countries. We just launched build-outs into Ivory Coast and Senegal this year.
Where all do you operate? You're in Ghana, Nigeria?
Yeah, we currently deliver service to 10 countries in West Africa. We have physical builds into Nigeria, Ghana, Cameroon. We're adding Ivory Coast and Senegal. We have a data center here in Nigeria that's starting to host both global and local content here, bringing that closer to the eyeballs. We're also building terrestrial fiber networks across Nigeria, again, to deepen internet penetration, improve the quality of access. So West Africa is a focus, and enabling that broadband infrastructure is what we do.
Okay, and where is, I mean, I see the stats, but where is internet penetration these days by your estimation? Let's just say for Nigeria and the continent at large. I mean, you always hear around 1/3. Is that accurate?
I think it's in that range, probably slightly higher for Nigeria, because in the dense urban areas, you have much greater access. When you look at the statistics from the regulators, it's much higher, but you have people who have multiple handsets or who are double or triple counted. I would say it's probably closer to 40% of the adult population. Let's say adult population because the stats tend to say that, but of the adult population that has access to the internet. Highly concentrated in the urban areas, and then it falls off as you get into the rural areas.
And continent-wide, I hear 35% frequently?
Yes, continent-wide, as you get into landlocked countries, depending on the environment, obviously the access of infrastructure and services and affordability, that number goes quite lower. And there's some the black spots in Nigeria where you cannot access the internet. So it's not just outside.
Let's talk about that because there have been so many strides, and I think the numbers 5 or 10 years ago would have been under 30% just about everywhere, right?
Yeah, definitely closer to 10. Perhaps South Africa would have been 20-25% when we started.
Well, let's talk about some hypotheticals, right?
Okay.
Because there's so much going on positive in African tech, but the underlying baseline is connectivity, and for all the progress, Africa still is last in pretty much all the global rankings. So you started off with a big idea. So let's just say hypothetically that the AU created a connectivity czar with country and private sector support and resources, and they appointed you, Funke Opeke, to be the connectivity czar of the continent, with a mandate to grow connectivity to 60% penetration in 10 years. How would you do it? Easy question, right?
Yeah, easy question. A couple of things I would do. One, I would work with the governments that form the AU to create enabling policies for private sector.
Okay.
Now, I would urge them to take into consideration the unique circumstances of each of their countries in terms of who the players are, the markets, the size of the market, the capacity of the market, the geography, and coming up with sectors that, with policies that ensure private sector players are able to come in and make money.
Right.
You know, you have to have that enabling environment. Too many times, our government runs after raising capital to build infrastructure or to seed projects that they never complete or don't have the sustainability from one administration to the next when policies change. But what you need to do is bring in the private sector that can create a sustainable business and make that business grow and deliver service to the people. So that would be probably my primary focus is doing that. The second one, which because you do need that private sector to be enabled, is I will try to bring the private sector interest together. The global players who have an interest in deepening the internet ecosystem here, and local players who have capacity to support those structures and actually deploy and build the businesses. I think government getting out of the way and creating that enabling environment is the most important thing that I could achieve in that kind of position.
We want to come back to government, but on the connectivity, you know, how much of it is a technology problem versus a business problem? Because you can create connectivity, but then it's tough for a lot of people to actually afford it on a market basis.
Yes, indeed, it's more a business problem than a technology problem because the global best practices is access to information and education. So I think there's awareness of the latest and greatest technologies being deployed globally, available through the net, and you can learn a lot and engage those suppliers. The question is, given the size of the market and the capacity of the market here and the state of our infrastructure, how do you deploy those in a profitable and sustainable manner? And if you're not able to do that, even if there's a government project to seed that kind of effort, then it's not long-lasting, it's not sustainable. So it's really about coming up with economic models that make that work. One of the challenges that we've highlighted is here in Africa, where you have the lowest incomes or GDP per capita, we still don't have a lot of shared infrastructure or shared networks. And so each time a consumer is trying to buy service, they're paying the full cost of their service provider having to deploy the entire value chain or infrastructure chain and passing on those costs to them. Also, governments see telecoms or ICT as a high-value sector. And so the input taxes are disproportionate to the benefits that the technology brings. So rather than try to eliminate input taxes, permits, right-of-ways, licenses, spectrum fees, things that make it easy and more affordable for technology to be deployed, we put a lot of those things up front and then slow down the rate of capital investment. And it would be much more beneficial, I think, to the economy as a whole if the input taxes and the barriers to entry were lowered, the barriers to operation were removed, the logistical challenge, the friction were removed, and at the end of the day, then the taxes are derived from payroll taxes when jobs are created, the increase in the economy, value-added taxes and the like, as opposed to having people pay up front all these fees and registrations and whatnot when they're just really trying to get things off the ground.
Well, let's talk about government. I know you and I talked a little bit about it, and I've been talking to the tech ecosystem about government, what's needed or not, for years now, and I always hear kind of three different categories. It's nothing, everything or just enough. Nothing meaning we're startups, the best thing about us is we don't need anything from government and we don't want it. Everything is the top-down. Government builds tech hubs, and they're building things. We want Kansas City and Hope City in Ghana, and just enough is give us enough to not embarrass our investors and then stay out of our way. What do you think government needs to do, and you can use Nigeria as an example, to create the enabling environment you mentioned for tech startups?
Well, I think it's give it just enough, and we can come back to what that just enough is.
You don't have to go by all those categories, but
no, but it's definitely not top down. And just as you were asking that question, the thing that came to my mind is that the tech hubs that were created by our previous administration no longer exist today.
Right.
So we know government creating tech hubs cannot be a good idea.
So Idea Hub.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. So really, again, that's why private sector or even not-for-profits, but some organization that has some sustainability model to it.
Right.
They're better creating this kind of institutions. I think what government needs to do is create an enabling environment. When you think of the challenges of startups in this environment, it's the logistics of their staff getting to work, it's high cost, having reliable electricity or having to run generators, it's security, it's the skills, finding the people who are well prepared through our academic institutions. It's having good health care, so when their staff are sick or they don't have to worry so much about their families.
So very, very holistic.
So it's a very holistic, I think that's what government needs to do.
And a good airport, we mentioned that too.
And a good airport, yes.
So VCs aren't afraid when they get off the plane, right?
Yes,
We're talking about Ghana and Lagos.
I just came back from Ghana last night. The new international airport is wow.
It's nice.
Yes, it's really nice.
Yeah. I want to ask you about VC, and I want to ask a question before a question.
Okay.
The VC environment for startups has gotten so much better.
Yes.
But there's a sense that angels have been a little slow, meaning prominent Africans or Nigerians investing and becoming angels to startups. Is that the case? Is that how you see it?
Yes. So suddenly the VC community has developed faster than the angel community here in recent years. And part of it is the structures don't exist.
Okay.
I mean, getting information about businesses, about wealth, about capacity, about who's willing to invest, being able to do KYC on ourselves, on some of these small businesses. The rule of law doesn't really exist. So things tend to work here a lot through informal networks.
Right.
And the individual angel sitting in his house with some money or his small business and some willingness to support startups does not really know where to start.
Right.
And I think the lack of information and the lack of structures and for support to build those angel networks is really what has slowed down the development. I started MainOne with angel funding.
Right.
But I had one really big angel who was able to pull his network in, and that's how we raised the money.
So what would be your advice to startups on how to tap angels, how to convince people? I'm sure you had quite a bit of convincing to do, and what you did is more challenging than what a lot of startups are doing. What's your advice for them to tap local angel investment?
Well, if you go by 6 degrees of separation, you're only so far from the people who have this money anyway. I recall when I was raising money, I had my presentation ready, the info memo, my computer, and days, nights, or weekends, I would get a call from my advisory board at that time with a name and a phone number. This is someone else you can talk to. And I immediately got on the phone and tried to set up a meeting and made a pitch. So it was just, endless. It was an endless stream. ready to go at any time.
So,
that was
so
the priority.
relationships and smart hustle.
It's a smart hustle for that period until you raise the money. Until you get it, there's no alternative or no greater priority.
Do you get pitched as a successful CEO?
Yes, I do get pitched as a successful CEO, and I am more than fully vested in MainOne. But occasionally I'll strain and support. But to be honest, what I'm able to do better for startups is tap into my network and also guide them through that process. It's a very daunting and difficult process for a lot of young companies, and helping them refine the business plan, refine the pitch, coach them through, give them that support, I found incredibly useful and beneficial to some of the startups that I've been fortunate enough to work with.
So I know MainOne is doing something to support the startup community. Like I saw you're giving connectivity to MEST. Have you done any venture activity or considered some kind of a venture arm?
So not as a company. We haven't done any venture activity.
Right.
As an individual, I mentioned I've done a tiny bit. To be honest, not really significant. We're still growing. It's a full-time effort. As you said, friction is high. So if friction is high for a startup, for a much larger startup like we are, trying to build a lot of infrastructure, you can imagine the amount of friction that we have to deal with as a business. So to be honest, we're still really focused. The penetration, internet penetration, the quality of access, the amount of content on the continent, the environment to support our startups with the kind of infrastructure and services they need so that they can accelerate faster, still does not exist. And that's really where we put more of our efforts. In that, if we're able to help startups with infrastructure, with services, with cloud services, with skill set, then we try to extend ourselves and do that.
So we've got time for about 2 more questions. Anything we can, in terms of MainOne, new headlines, new things you guys might do, we can coax you into telling us first here on the Startup Battlefield stage?
Not really. I think we look forward to building more infrastructure. If you look at penetration, and we talk about, all the world is talking about 5G now. I think unrealistic to talk about that in most parts of West Africa because 4G penetration is quite low. So we are working. We are running pilots this year in 2 states, Ogun and Edo State, 2 major cities, Benin City and Abeokuta, where we are deploying metro fiber citywide to enhance connectivity across those cities for 4G, for Wi-Fi, connecting government institutions, a commitment to connecting all the educational institutions in those cities. And we hope those become models for other cities around the country as to how you can deploy aggressive broadband penetration, and then you can monitor the impact it has on the economy and society in general.
Well, I'm sure the startup community will be watching. So I saved the most pressing question as the last one. So you commute back and forth between Nigeria and Ghana. Who has the best jollof rice? I'm putting you on the spot. No answer?
It's a taste issue.
Yeah?
So it's personal taste, and I will reserve.
You'll reserve?
My preference.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So that would be the headline tomorrow, everything we've talked about.
Yes.
Funke Opeke's choice on jollof rice.
It's personal.
Okay, we'll leave it. Okay. All right, well, listen, we want to thank you so much, Funke, and thank you guys. And please give a hand for Funke Opeke, MainOne CEO.